Good morning to you all. Just for the essence of the recording, my name's Nina O'Brien, the Disaster Resilience and Recovery Lead here at FRRR. I'm joined by Fiona Bradshaw here to my right. I'm also joined by other members of the Future Drought Fund team and NAUS, our evaluation partners, and delivery partners, the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation. So good morning to you all. We have an hour and a half for today's session. And the purpose of today's session is really to provide a communal and collaborative conversation to bring you all up to speed and to answer questions around the local program design process for the tranche 3 of regions that are moving through the Helping Regional Communities Prepare for Drought Community Impact Program. Before I get kicked off, I would just like to extend my deep acknowledgement and respect to the people on Dja Dja Wurrung country where Fiona and myself join you from today, and pay my respect to elders past and present. Just a quick recap around the actual initiative itself. This is, in really simple terms, the formal title of the program and initiative is the Helping Future Drought Funds, Helping Regional Communities Prepare for Drought Community Impact Program Initiative. So this is one of 5 elements that we are delivering in partnership with the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation. Today, we are just talking about the Community Impact Program and how it relates to you as community partner lead organisations that are about to undertake the co-design process. And I also extend a welcome to the facilitators that FRRR have engaged who are online with us today as well. It's, in really simple terms, a $30 million investment. That's one of many investments under the federal architecture of the Future Drought Fund. This particular stream of investment focuses on building social resilience for people and communities right across Australia. This particular stream of investment, the Community Impact Grants, is working in 35 defined regions to achieve an investment in your local regions of between $200,000 and $500,000. The total funding pool for community impact right across the board is $12.1 million nationally. Do quick maths on that. That's the average grants. And you can see by our tranche 1 announcements that we're just about to make is that that's $345,000 on average per grant for each region. So do keep that in mind with your program design processes. Delivered in partnership with that is the leadership activities that the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation will be delivering as part of this conversation and process. Is a really important part of this work. The other small networks grants, the National Expertise Pool and the evaluation, the mentoring and the National Learning Network. We're more than happy to have conversations with you about those, but there'll be conversations beyond today. In simple terms, I've just touched on, there are 5 main elements. We are focusing on just the Community Impact Program today. The focus for this program really is a focus on younger and emerging leaders, as well as supporting First Nations communities as well. That's a quick snapshot of those particular elements. The community impact programs are really designed as a specific investment whereby local communities and regions can come together to develop and co-design a range of projects, initiatives, or events, activities that will build drought preparedness for the future. And so while the architecture of the Future Drought Fund looks to that triple bottom line of financial, economic and social outcomes, this stated focus of this investment is very much around social outcomes and having that social impact, deeper social connectedness as a region, so we be better prepared for future droughts. We will understand that there is a deep interconnectedness between those 3 elements, but there are other more appropriate investment streams for environmental economic focused programs. The purpose of the community leadership activities that are sit alongside the community impact grants is it's an opportunity for your regions to work really closely with the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation to develop leadership skills so that they can, as a region, you can be better prepared and have greater capability to respond to those challenges as well. In simple terms, and all this detail is in the program guidelines and the associated guide that sits alongside of this. But in simple terms, as you would well know through the expressions features that you've lodged, there are 5 main elements that you can choose from in your leadership support. Just hand over to let some people into the conversation as we're moving through the presentation. Welcome to those of you who are just coming online. We will have contact details at the end of the presentation, so if you have specific queries around the available, we highly encourage you to chat to Catherine and the team at ARLF to move through that. In terms of the high level outcomes that we're seeking for this investment in the long term, and when I say long term, the remit of this funding is to support communities through till the end of June 2025. So it does have a much longer scope than what we delivered in stage 1 of this work, which is really positive. And all of these sort of outcomes come from the theory of change from within the Future Drought Fund itself. The great thing about building drought resilience and drought preparedness is that it will look really different in each of your regions, and we've certainly observed that in our tranche 1 of regions already. That is the purpose of co-design, is that you can devise ways in which you want to strengthen the ability of your community to be better prepared for droughts into the future. But from a high level perspective, we're really looking for projects that will identify and adopt innovative and transformative ways to do that. I think in a really deep-seated way, we're looking for a change in awareness and attitudes to drought preparedness at a community level. Historically, communities, and we have delivered in drought support in previous droughts, 2018-19, but my sense is increasingly will be less in drought support, much more of a focus on being prepared for the future. And so this is an opportunity to get on the front foot and think about how we don't want to be in that passive position of needing support where we're in the thick of drought and under a pretty high level of duress. We really want this investment to provide opportunities to you all to share innovative ways to build drought resilience. I think one of the great things about working across 35 regions is that it's a great opportunity for you to link across regions and to share some of those really interesting things that you're doing. We are also seeking to and happy to financially support through this investment greater access and utilisation of your community infrastructure locally. Sometimes we know that's a real barrier to communities coming together. So that's, we'd be looking for you to identify where those barriers might be and how we can strengthen that. So come the next drought, you do have really robust facilities and there are great places to meet and there's appropriate equipment and so forth in those venues. And broadly, it's about communities building their local leadership networks and social support, so we can really strengthen that deep social connection, both between individuals but also between organisations, local community organisations that play a really critical role in droughts that are under-resourced to do so. The purpose of this investment is to build your capability to be able to do that more effectively. There is 35 regions, as I mentioned. You have all been identified as the singular Community Partner Lead Organisation, or CPLO, for each of these regions. The small networks grants will continue after we have determined where the investment spread is for the community impact program. You can see joining us today that it truly is a national program, and we have a whole range of you online, so it's fantastic to see that geographic spread. And you can see the diversity of organisations that are sitting here at the table too, in terms of joining us. We can share this presentation for you afterwards. For those of you who can't quite, that is quite small font, apologise about that. But fantastic to see that geographical spread. In the original design of the program, 35 regions were going to move through this process, you know, in unison, with the whole range of extenuating circumstances, primarily climate, but not exclusively, late last year. We've now divided the 35 regions up into 3 tranches or 3 clusters, so we can move through that process together. And so in this tranche, there are 15 regions that are going through this process. So in broad terms, by the end of this calendar year, all 35 of those regions will have their investment delivered to them, which is fantastic. So the next steps in terms of where we're up to, in terms of understanding who does what and who takes a role and so forth. The next step will be for you to meet with your facilitator to discuss the co-design approach, both in format and timing. What we're really seeking to make clear today is what both the diversity or methods that you may choose to undertake throughout your co-design process, but also when we get to that submission date, what's the level of documentation that you need to have on hand and who's responsible for that. We can be all clear about, because there are multiple partners and there's multiple sort of moving parts. We have also updated the implementation guide. So for those facilitators who might have used that in stage, earlier stages, we have taken on board your FEMA and strengthened some of the clarification in terms of roles and responsibilities. So we trust that is helpful. The first step really is to the CPLOs to meet with their facilitators, ARLF and FRRR to decide on what your approach to co-design will be. We know that's going to be different in each region, and to submit that co-design plan to us. We do ask that you submit that to us before you actually start co-design. That's really critical, so that we can be clear. The CPLOs, in partnership with your facilitators, will then connect with the community organisations in your region with a particular focus on First Nations and young people. This is really critical that these 2 particular cohorts of community are engaged in this process. The Department of Agriculture, and contractually we have obligations to ensure that these 2 groups within all of our communities are engaged and meaningfully participate in this process. We understand that looks different in each region as well, so we welcome your feedback in terms of what's appropriate in that regard. Certainly no cookie-cutter approach that we're taking. So the facilitator will then undertake the facilitation process. So while it's supported by the community partner lead organisation, it's the role of the facilitator to drive that structure and process, and to make sure that there are a diverse range of voices, there is a diverse range of organisations. So in the earlier phases of this work, we've seen quite a high focus on agricultural related organisations, which is fantastic. We'd also love to see some diversification into more community service-based organisations. And, you know, the reality is many people play a role in being prepared for droughts and when you're dealing with a drought. So we encourage you to think very laterally about who those people are. Are they community sector organisations? Are they service organisations? Are they mental organisations? There's a whole range of people that could choose to be involved. Thanks, Billy, to that IT support. Just screw it back to, no, that's okay. One thing that we did have, there was a degree of lack of clarity in the first phases of this work is what role the community partner lead organisation plays in the decision making for how those projects are chosen. The idea of co-design in its really simple, sort of most simple format, is to bring a diverse range of voices into the room, generate ideas that then elicit projects and initiatives and actions that can make a difference. It was never designed and is never designed to be a competitive process that involves things like voting or one organisation flourishing or benefiting above another. We also understand that a community partner lead will play a different role in each of these regions. In our initial design thinking with this program is the community partner lead would act as the coordination agent, but they don't, so they would act as the coordination agent, and then there would be a suite of other projects that sit below that might be delivered by the CPLO, but in an ideal world, there would be up to half a dozen local organisations that would take carriage of each of those individual projects or initiatives. Now, in some of our regions, the CPLO are being both the coordinator and project delivery partner, which we acknowledge is appropriate, particularly in some remote regions. But our sort of preferred position is that there's diversity in who that community partner lead is, and then who leads those individual projects. From a contractual perspective, FRRR will engage, if approved, we will engage the community partner lead in one grant agreement for just the coordination. So that primarily will pay you or your staff members to participate and in the evaluation and encourage that collaboration across your partners. But we will then have separate grant agreements for standalone projects with yourselves as CPLOs or with your other community partners as well. That's a really critical sort of structural understanding to sort of grasp, and happy to answer questions about that at the end. In terms of roles and responsibilities for each of us that are involved, the full detail of this is in the implementation guide, so don't stress too much about writing this down. But in simple terms, the facilitator works with us to scope the co-design and lodge that plan. They will lead and facilitate the co-design process, and it's primarily the role of the facilitator to ensure that alignment to the program guidelines, make sure the scope is appropriate geographically, make sure there's an appropriate number of projects, and make sure that the cost in the roadmap is suitable. The guidelines say that the total cost of regional proposals can't be more than 500,000. Now, we've had a number of regional proposals that have come in that have been well above 500. One thing to keep in mind is that by virtue of our relationship, this is being federally funded, proportionate funding rules apply. So you remember I mentioned earlier there's 35 regions. We divide that pot of money, investment up by $12.1 million, you divide that by 35 regions. The average grant is likely to be in the vicinity of $345,000. If you put forward a proposal that's higher than that, that will be proportionately reduced with all of the proposals that come in through that tranche. So do be aware of that, and we're happy to support you in your budget development as we move through the process as well. But managing those expectations, it primarily sits with the facilitator as you move through the co-design process. The last job of the facilitator is to then submit that completed roadmap. The community partner lead organisation, on the other hand, plays more of an administrative role in the background to leverage some of your community networks within the region to promote and invite a broad range of people and organisations to those co-design processes. Importantly, the CPLOs don't decide which projects will go forward or not. This is designed to be a genuinely democratic and collaborative process. The community partner lead will then complete the overall project plan. They'll complete the overall budget. All of those documents will then be submitted to FRRR by the due date. And then if successful, like I described before, we'll complete, undertake a grant agreement with ourselves for both their projects, but separately as to the region coordination as well. In terms of the collaborating organisations that come to the table to run those individual initiatives themselves, where that's collectively agreed, they will submit a budget and a project plan to just for their tiny chunk of work. They will submit that to the community partner lead organisation. Some of our facilitators have done some fantastic work and have iterated and designed some tools that have been really useful that we're now using across all of those regions. So thank you for being innovative and taking the lead on some of those things. That's been really helpful, and thank you for sharing those across as well. So that spreads the administrative load, but it also makes sure that once those proposals land with us, they have very clear budgets, for instance. This is not back of the envelope budgeting, you know. It's really clear that when those proposals come across to us, that the scope of the projects is clear, but also what the costs associated. We do take a really close look at those budgets when they come to us and make sure that they're appropriate. In terms of the collaborators, they will then sign an individual grant agreement with FRRR as well. So that won't involve the community partner lead organisation. That's a direct relationship between the collaborating organisations and ourselves. We've had some queries in the past in terms of, is the CPLO responsible for making sure those projects are delivered? The answer is no. That's why we undertake a grant agreement directly with those collaborators, and that granting relationship would be just like any other Senate of FRRR grant. So, and again, this full detail is in the co-design plan, but it is something that we have strengthened just to clarify when we say co-design, what do we actually mean by that? I think a lot of people talk about co-design, and there's a fairly wide spectrum of what people know and understand and activate to be co-design. So for the instance, when we say co-design, what we mean when we say that is that in an ideal world, this will provide an opportunity for local people to have a say in how this federal drought investment is used in your local community and region. It provides an opportunity to design projects from the ground up to strengthen drought preparedness. It's strongly designed to encourage collaboration and new ways of working that will pay dividends in the next drought. What we have encouraged and enabled flexibility within is the ways in which you can do this on a local level. We understand that it's quite a complex environment, particularly when regional drought resilience plans, for instance, some regions they're in place and well developed and have involved quite significant previous consultation. In other regions that hasn't occurred at all. So we're enabling a high level of flexibility as to how you go about doing your co-design. That's really for the community partner lead organisation and your facilitator to come up with ways in which, you know, will work in your region. Sometimes in the last previous tranches, workshops, surveys, one-on-one interviews, small group interviews. There's a whole range of ways, online polls. There's a whole range of ways that you can undertake a co-design, and we often see that a combination of some of those things is often really useful to make sure that you can get those diverse voices at the table. But we're leaving that in your capable hands to decide what's appropriate locally. In broad terms, we just want to see diverse voices at the table. And as I mentioned before, it absolutely must involve young people and people from First Nations background. The purpose of the co-design is to end up with a collaborative agreement by all parties, one or a series of local projects, events or initiatives that are led either by yourselves as the community partner lead organisation or your collaborating organisations. When you get to the end of the co-design, you should have a really clear idea of how many projects you're going to run, what the estimated investment that's going to take, who's the organisation that has the capability to lead those individual projects. Ideally, all of those initiatives would bear some relationship to each other. It really is a process where we would look to see that everyone can have a voice and a role to play and can host their own project if they want to. We, like all new programs, there's been rich learning in the previous tranches of our work, and so to be really clear about what co-design is not, it's not consultation. It goes much deeper than that. It's not just about asking someone's opinion and then saying thanks very much and walking away and then, you know, designing a project, you know, in the back room of your office. It is absolutely about coming to a shared agreement about what will make a difference in your region into the future. It's not just a survey and competitive popularity-based voting. That's absolutely what we do not want to see. We don't want to see this creating additional competitiveness with regard to access to these funds. That's absolutely not what we're wanting to see. It's also not a structure that supports one organisation to hold all the funds for the whole region. That was never the intent of the program. Some of our previous community partner lead organisations have, because this is such a new way of working, taken the view or have assumed that it's their role to manage the total bundle of funds for the region and then the community partner lead to disseminate that out to individual projects. That's absolutely not the case. That's why we will undertake separate grant agreements with every single organisation. That spreads the funding load, but it also builds the capability of a whole range of organisations in your region, which is one of our inherent intents of this program. So in terms of key dates, and again, these are in the implementation guide, what we're really getting cracking on now is just agreeing on what these co-design processes look like in all of your regions. The co-design period we have actually extended for this tranche. We've taken on board community feedback and extended that window of dates that we can offer you where co-design takes place. So that's from now until mid-June. Do note that if required and if appropriate, DAF, Australian Rural Leadership Foundation, our evaluation partner NOUS Group, who's on the call today, who can answer questions at the end if you have any, and any other FDF partners must have the opportunity to attend those co-design sessions where required. We will certainly try to manage that so there's not a cast of thousands from our perspective sitting in the room while you're doing co-design. But do know that that's one of the obligations we have to DAF is to provide line of sight to what's, and they, can I say, have a really deep, genuine interest in the work that you're undertaking at a community level. The evaluation partner is observing how these processes and delivery investment can really work more effectively into the future. So it's really critical that they're part of those observations as well. 16th of June is a key date that we're working towards. So all of the collaborating organisations will need to get their contact details to us so we can enter them into the system as a potential grantee. And that's also when the facilitator will submit those roadmaps to us. And then essentially you've got a week as a community partner lead organisation to then gather all of your other associated documentation, project plans and budgets. And then they will be assessed by both the FDF Program Advisory Committee and then the FRRR board. By September, mid-September, we'll be in a position to advise successful funding, and then pending the execution of those grant agreements, we can collectively get cracking on the activity between now and the end of June 2025. So we do have some key people, and sometimes when you're working in a multi-partner environment, it's tricky to know who to talk to and pick up the phone to, isn't it? So in terms of the key personnel, myself, Fiona and Alicia are your primary contacts. From time to time, you'll chat with Kate from program coordination perspective. You'll certainly hear from Brooke from an evaluation perspective, and Anna and her team of colleagues at NOUS. You'll hear from them too in terms of surveys. From the Australian Rural Leadership perspective, you'll be hearing from Catherine and Leslie with regard to their work as well. And just bear with me. Just bear with us while we unshare the screen. We did have a last slide, I thought, with the contact details, because that's always handy, isn't it, having someone's phone number. And when you need to contact them, we'll fix that before we send that back out to you all.